years old, which seems quaint today. How do we most remember Jimmy Carter?
Well, I think some people, just as Lester was saying, and many of our viewers will remember him, those who remember him going through that period. I remember I was getting my MBA at Harvard Business School at the time in my early 20s, in the late 70s, and inflation was terrible. It was going up to 14%, and Carter's policies to some extent had a role in that. At the same time, however, one thing is not looked at as much as it should be, and that is he chose for the Federal Reserve Chairman Paul Volcker in 1979 with an explicit mandate to do everything he could to try to tamp down on inflation, which Volcker did. And Carter paid two big costs for that. One was inflation in 1980 was 14%, and interest rates were extremely high. People were really suffering. Democrats like Ted Kennedy were furious at Carter and ran against him and denounced him in public, saying, this is not a Democratic president if he appoints someone like Paul Volcker. But at the same time, Volcker's policies worked, although it made Carter so unpopular that it made it very hard for him to get reelected against Ronald Reagan.
And a lot of people that we talk to on the financial side will say, well, it's not fair to blame Jimmy Carter for the inflation that he inherited. A lot of the things that were already inflationary, it sounds very similar to Joe Biden, by the way, when he took office. But as a presidential historian, I think you would also have to agree, right or wrong, presidents and elected officials sometimes have to deal the hand that's been dealt them. And in many ways, Carter was not dealt a great inflationary hand.
He was not. And it even goes back to Richard Nixon years before wage and price controls. How do you feel about those, Brian? Richard Nixon did that in 1971 to try to bring down inflation and improve the economic picture so that he could get reelected in 1972, which he did. That was not the direct cause of inflation in '79. There was an oil embargo, oil prices were going up, all sorts of things. But all I'm saying is that Carter should at least be honored for choosing Volcker and asking him to crush inflation. And Ronald Reagan, to a great extent, was the beneficiary of those policies. It came down to 3%.
Yeah.